The champagne glass nearly slipped from Zephyr Beaumont's fingers. Not because it was heavy, because of what he just heard. Two men, standing 3 feet away, expensive suits, low voices, thinking they were quiet enough. They weren't. He still doesn't wear a ring. I know. You'd think a man like Dante would have locked that down by now. A pause. Then laughter. Polite. Cruel. The kind that wraps itself in silk so you can't call it what it is. Zephyr kept his face still. He was good at that. Years of Manhattan galas, years of being the most visible person in the room while somehow feeling completely invisible. He had mastered the art of looking unbothered. His purple suit caught the chandelier light. Diamond stud in his left ear. Jaw set like carved stone. He looked untouchable. He did not feel untouchable. Dante Rashid moved beside him. Navy suit. Gold watch. Dark eyes scanning the room the way a man scans a chessboard. Already 3 moves ahead. He hadn't spoken in 4 minutes. That wasn't unusual. Dante didn't fill silence with noise. He filled it with presence. And that presence was enough to make grown men rearrange their positions across a room. But tonight, that presence wasn't protecting Zephyr from the whispers. Hi viewers. Have you ever stood next to someone powerful and still felt completely alone? The whispers kept moving through the lobby like smoke. No ring means no commitment. He's beautiful, sure. But beautiful doesn't mean chosen. Zephyr exhaled slowly through his nose. Then the room shifted. Not loudly, just a change in temperature. A few heads turned toward the entrance. A few smiles stiffened. A few eyes cut to Zephyr's face the way people look at someone right before something bad happens to them, searching for the reaction before the hit even lands. Zephyr turned, and his stomach dropped straight to the marble floor. Gray suit. Expensive cologne you could smell from 10 feet away. A smile that had once made Zephyr believe in things he should have known better than to believe in. Cassius Crowe walked into the Echelon Hotel Gala like he owned the deed to every soul inside it. He spotted Zephyr immediately. He always did. Cassius crossed the lobby slowly, deliberately, his eyes locked and his smile widening with every step. The kind of smile that means the person wearing it already knows the ending. He stopped 2 feet away, looked Zephyr up and down, then said, quietly enough that only Zephyr could hear, "Still no ring." Zephyr's jaw tightened. Cassius tilted his head. Wow! A soft exhale, like he was almost sad about it. "So you really are temporary." Zephyr said nothing, because before he could form a single word, Cassius turned, slowly, deliberately, and raised his voice just enough for the nearest cluster of wealthy guests to catch every syllable. "Everyone, look. He's still not chosen." The lobby didn't erupt. It went quiet, which was so much worse. Zephyr didn't move. That was the first thing. He didn't flinch, didn't step back, didn't reach for Dante's arm like a man grabbing a life jacket. He stood exactly where he was, champagne glass still in hand, and let the silence settle around him like a coat he hadn't asked to wear. Cassius watched him with that same patient smile. He was waiting for a crack. He'd always been good at finding them. 3 years ago, Cassius Crowe had been the most important person in Zephyr Beaumont's world. He said the right things. He showed up at the right moments. He made Zephyr feel like being chosen by him meant something, meant everything. Then Zephyr's finances collapsed. A bad investment. A betrayed business partner. 6 months of bleeding money in silence because pride is a currency the broke still carry. Cassius left on a Tuesday. No argument. No explosion. He just stopped showing up. And 2 weeks later, he was photographed at this very hotel with someone whose net worth had 7 digits before the decimal point. That was Cassius Crowe. He didn't leave people out of anger. He left them out of arithmetic. Back in the present, Cassius was already working the room, shaking hands, laughing, performing warmth for men who bought and sold warmth daily. He moved like a man who believed charm was a renewable resource and he'd never run low. Every few minutes, his eyes came back to Zephyr, checking, measuring. Dante stood at Zephyr's side, still quiet, still reading the room. His hand had moved, barely, almost nothing, but it rested now at the edge of Zephyr's waist. Not grabbing, not pulling, just present. Zephyr felt it. He didn't look up. Cassius drifted closer again, this time with two wealthy investors flanking him like an audience he'd arranged. He reached out and touched Zephyr's shoulder. Familiar, comfortable, like he had the right. "You look well," Cassius said warmly, for the benefit of the men beside him. "It's good to see you landing on your feet." Landing on your feet, like Zephyr had been falling, like Dante was a net, not a choice. Zephyr opened his mouth, but Cassius was already pivoting, turning his smile directly at Dante now. "Tell me, billionaire." His voice was easy, conversational. The words hit like a blade wrapped in velvet. "Is he yours? Or are you just borrowing him?" Dante didn't answer immediately. He looked at Cassius the way you look at a mistake someone else made. Then Dante's fingers, the ones resting at Zephyr's waist, tightened. Just slightly, just enough. The room had a pulse now. It wasn't visible. You couldn't point to it. But everyone in that lobby felt it. The low hum of something building, the way expensive people pretend not to watch while watching every single thing. Champagne flutes stayed close to mouths longer than necessary. Conversations dropped half a volume. Cassius felt the shift and fed off it. That was his skill, reading an audience, then performing for it. He turned slightly, just enough to include the nearby circle of guests without making it look intentional. "I'm only saying what people are thinking," Cassius continued, voice smooth and generous, like he was doing everyone a favor. "Zephyr's been with this man for, 2 years? And nobody's seen a ring. Nobody's seen a title. Nobody's seen a claim." He paused. "Let that land. In our world." He gestured loosely at the marble, the chandeliers, the careful architecture of wealth around them. "That means something." A man in a dark suit near the bar laughed, short, quiet, quickly swallowed. But it was heard. Then another, polite, precise, the kind of laughter that only costs the person being laughed at. Zephyr's chest pulled tight. He remembered this feeling. Exactly this. Standing in a room full of people and becoming, in the span of 30 seconds, the thing they were all agreeing about without ever taking a vote. Cassius wasn't done. "I'll be honest," he said, lowering his voice like he was sharing something intimate. "I've always thought Zephyr deserved better than uncertainty. He's a beautiful man. He's smart. He's refined." A slow shake of the head. "But beautiful doesn't close deals. And uncertainty." He glanced at Dante. "Uncertainty is just a polite word for being kept." The word landed flat and final. Kept. Zephyr's fingers tightened around his champagne glass. In his head, a voice, quiet, familiar, exhausted, told him to leave, to excuse himself, to find a bathroom, a staircase, any surface that wasn't the center of a room full of people watching him absorb damage. He almost moved. Then Cassius tilted his head and delivered the line like punctuation. "He's not a partner. He's a pretty accessory someone forgot to tag." The laugh that followed was louder this time. 3 men near the column. One woman in emerald who pressed her fingers over her lips like that would hide it. Zephyr's eyes stung. Not from tears. From the specific, suffocating heat of humiliation that has nowhere to go. He turned slightly, not to flee, just to shift, just to breathe, and Cassius stepped to the left. blocking him, casual, deliberate. A move so small that no one watching could call it blocking. But it was. His body language was clear. "You're not going anywhere yet." Zephyr looked up at him, and for one terrible second, he thought about every version of himself that had trusted this man. Then, Dante moved. Not fast, not loud. He stepped forward once. His voice came out low, almost gentle, almost, "Say that again." The two words didn't rise. They didn't shake. They came out the way pressure comes out of a sealed room when someone finally opens the door, controlled, inevitable, and carrying the full weight of everything that had been building behind it. Cassius turned to face Dante fully, and for the first time all evening, the confidence behind his eyes flickered. Just once, like a light in a storm. He recovered fast. Men like Cassius always did, and rebuilt the smile with practiced ease. "Relax," Cassius said. "I'm having a conversation." "You're performing," Dante replied. "There's a difference." The nearby guests had stopped pretending to talk. Dante didn't acknowledge them. He never played to a room. That was the distinction. Cassius needed the audience. Dante simply did not care that one existed. He looked at Cassius the way men look at a number that doesn't add up. And then something shifted in Zephyr's chest. Because he actually noticed, something he hadn't clocked before tonight. Cassius was nervous. Not visibly, not obviously, but the tells were there if you knew where to look. The slight set of his jaw. The way his left hand had moved from his pocket to his side. The fraction of a second he'd taken to rebuild that smile. Cassius Crowe was afraid of Dante Rashid. Not because Dante was louder, because Dante was still. The kind of still that means the decision has already been made and the only thing left is execution. Zephyr scanned the room quietly. 3 men he hadn't noticed before had repositioned, standing near exits, near columns, near the main staircase. Dark suits, no drinks in their hands, eyes moving in patterns, not conversation. Dante's men, they were always there. Zephyr had grown used to not seeing them, which was exactly the point. Then Zephyr caught something else. 2 men near the east corridor, speaking quietly, one of them glancing at Cassius with an expression that wasn't admiration. It was assessment. Like they were measuring a liability. Zephyr leaned slightly toward Dante without meaning to, and that was when he caught the edge of a conversation behind him. 2 voices. Low. Hurried. Crows in debt. A pause. Bad debt. Zephyr kept his expression flat. Kept his breathing even. He did not turn around. Cassius had pivoted again, already recalibrating, already finding his footing. And now his voice came back with fresh ammunition. Louder, aimed at the room like a headline. "Let's be honest." He spread his hands open. Easy. Reasonable. Like he was just being practical. An omega without a ring is just entertainment. The laugh that followed was immediate, scattered but real, and it hung in the chandelier light like smoke that wouldn't clear. Nobody stopped it. That was the part that cut deepest. Not Cassius. Not the men laughing near the column. Not the woman in emerald who had the grace to look away but not the spine to say anything. Nobody stopped it. And Zephyr had learned years ago in rooms exactly like this one, that silence from the crowd isn't neutrality. It's a vote. Cassius moved through his moment like a man who had rehearsed it. He knew the rhythm of public humiliation. He knew when to push and when to pull back just enough to keep the target off balance. "Purple suits look expensive," he said, eyeing Zephyr like an appraiser. "But expensive and valued are 2 different things. Wouldn't you agree?" He gestured at Zephyr's jacket. Lightly, dismissively. "A pretty accessory," he repeated, softer this time, "for emphasis. That's what this is." Zephyr's jaw was tight enough to crack. Inside his chest, something old was pressing up. An emotion he'd buried after Cassius left him on that Tuesday, after the photographs, after the silence. A specific kind of pain that lives in the space between knowing your worth and having a room full of people decide it for you anyway. He turned to leave. Enough. He was done. He didn't need to perform dignity for an audience that wasn't offering any in return. He'd take his exit quietly, find a hallway, and breathe, and let Dante handle whatever this political chess match was underneath the cruelty. He took one step. Cassius shifted, a half step to the left. Again, blocking. So smooth, so casual. A person watching from across the room would have sworn it was accidental. It was not accidental. Leaving already? Cassius said. His voice was low. Only for Zephyr now. You always run when things get real. A pause. A slow exhale. That's the thing about you, Zeph. You've never been able to stay in a room when it costs you something. Zephyr stopped. He looked at Cassius. And Cassius delivered the line like he'd been saving it all night. Clean, precise, aimed directly at the place in a person that never fully heals. No ring, no vow, no future. His voice dropped to almost nothing. That's what you are. The room felt very far away. Zephyr's eyes stung. Not from weakness. From the specific agony of being told your worst fear out loud by the person who helped create it. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just stood there. And then he felt it. A shift in the air behind him. A change. Dante's hand moved. Away from his waist. Away from the quiet, possessive stillness. And reached instead for the inside of his jacket. Slowly. With intention. The guests nearest to them caught the movement first. And then the ones behind them. And then the murmur rippled outward like something dropped into still water. Because whatever Dante Rashid was reaching for in that jacket, the expression on his face said this night was about to change completely. The black velvet box was already open before the crowd fully registered what was happening. No announcement. No speech. Dante didn't build to it. He didn't clear his throat or wait for silence or perform the moment the way men perform moments when they want credit for them. He just opened it. And the ring inside caught the chandelier light like it had been waiting all night to be seen. The lobby went so quiet you could hear the ice shifting in someone's glass 20 feet away. Cassius's smile didn't fall immediately. It took 3 full seconds. 3 seconds of his brain refusing to process what his eyes were delivering. Then the smile cracked, right down the center, and underneath it was something Zephyr had never seen on Cassius Crow's face before. Confusion. Real, unmanaged, unpolished confusion. Zephyr stared at the ring. He hadn't seen it before. That matters. He had been with Dante through private dinners and closed-door meetings and mornings that started before the city woke up. He knew Dante's jacket pockets. He knew the weight of his silences and the temperature of his moods. He had never seen that box. The ring itself wasn't loud. It wasn't stacked with stones trying to prove something. It was dark metal, rare, expensive in the way that doesn't announce itself. And along the inside band, a crest was engraved so precisely it looked like it had always existed there, waiting for a finger to belong to. The Rashid crest. Dante held it up. Not for applause. Not for the crowd. Just up. Present. Undeniable. Then he took Zephyr's hand. Slowly. Like he had all the time in the world and every second was intentional. And he said it without raising his voice. Without theater. Without performing even one syllable of it. I didn't give him a ring because I didn't need the world's permission to love him. The room exhaled. Cassius opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Dante wasn't finished. He looked at Zephyr, only at Zephyr, And the next words landed like something dropped from a great height, quiet and total and impossible to walk back. We've been married for 8 months. Silence. Not the polite kind. The kind that only happens when a room full of people all reach the same conclusion at the same moment and none of them know what to do with it. 8 months. Married. The woman in emerald pressed her hand flat against her chest. 2 investors near the bar looked at each other with the specific expression of men recalculating everything they thought they understood about the evening. Zephyr felt the ring slide onto his finger. Cool metal. Perfect fit. He looked down at it and felt something in his chest break open. Not painfully. The way a window breaks open in summer. Sudden. And then full of air. Cassius finally found his voice. Came out smaller than he intended. That's impossible. Dante turned to look at him, and for the first time all night he smiled. It was not a warm smile. The only impossible thing, Dante said, is you thinking you still matter. Cassius's face went through 4 emotions in 2 seconds. And then his jaw set hard, and Zephyr saw it, the shift. The moment Cassius stopped performing and started calculating. This wasn't over. The look in Cassius's eyes said so clearly it didn't need words. This was nowhere near over. Cassius laughed. Short, sharp, the kind of laugh that isn't really a laugh at all. It's a door slamming. 8 months. He said it like he was tasting something wrong. And you hid it. From everyone. He looked around the room slowly, making sure the audience was still his, making sure the narrative still had somewhere to go. You want to tell me that's love? That's not love. That's a contract. Dante said nothing. That was the answer. Cassius took 1 step forward, dropped his voice. He married you, he said, shifting his eyes to Zephyr. Because you're useful, not because you're loved. You're a piece on a board, Zeph. You always have been. First mine, now his. Zephyr's chest tightened. The ring on his finger suddenly felt very heavy, because the accusation was designed for exactly that, to find the crack that still existed, the old wound Cassius had helped create, and press directly on it in front of everyone. And it was working. Zephyr could feel doubt moving through him like cold water. He hadn't known about the ring. He hadn't known about the 8 months being revealed tonight. He hadn't been told. He hadn't been asked. He had been positioned, like a piece on a board. Dante noticed. Of course Dante noticed. He turned away from Cassius entirely, which was its own kind of dismissal, the kind that can't be recovered from, and his full attention landed on Zephyr. Not the crowd. Not the investors recalculating across the room. Zephyr. But before Dante could speak, something else happened. Quiet thing. A man in a charcoal suit near the north corridor, one of the investors who had been flanking Cassius all evening, laughing at the right moments, nodding at the right beats, took 2 small steps backward, away from Cassius. Then another man did the same. No announcement, no confrontation, just distance. Measured, deliberate distance. Because powerful men in rooms like this one do not choose sides out loud. They choose sides with their feet. And Cassius Crow's side of the room was getting smaller by the minute. Cassius saw it. His jaw tightened. And that was the moment Zephyr understood what tonight actually was. This wasn't jealousy. It wasn't heartbreak. Cassius hadn't walked into the Echelon Hotel Gala because he missed Zephyr Beaumont. He'd walked in because his company was bleeding. The rumors had been circulating for weeks. Acquisition talks that collapsed, a real estate deal that evaporated, creditors making calls that weren't being returned. Cassius needed Dante's contract to survive. Not to win, just to survive. And his plan had been to destabilize Dante emotionally through Zephyr. Shake the alpha. Create doubt. Create distance. Create an opening. It hadn't worked. So now Cassius did the only thing a desperate man with no leverage does when the room starts moving against him. He stopped calculating. And he snapped. "You think this is over?" His voice came out too loud, too raw. The polish was gone. "You don't get to just erase me from this room. I have connections in this city that predate your entire empire. Rashid. I will." "You'll what?" Dante's voice was almost gentle. That was the part that stopped Cassius cold. Not anger, not threat, gentleness. The specific gentleness of a man who has already decided the outcome and feels no need to rush toward it. Dante tilted his head slightly. "I own the debt you owe the syndicate," he said. Quiet, conversational, like he was mentioning the weather. "I bought it 3 weeks ago." The color drained from Cassius Crow's face. "All of it. Gone. And I just decided," Dante continued, "to collect." The room didn't hear the last part, but Cassius did. And every investor still watching Cassius's face saw exactly what those words did to it. The distance in the room grew wider. Cassius stood there, gray suit, expensive cologne, the remnants of a smile that had completely stopped functioning. And for the first time all night, he looked exactly like what he was. A man with nothing left to spend. Dante moved first. He didn't grab Zephyr's arm. He didn't issue a direction. He simply turned toward the east staircase and walked, and Zephyr followed because after 8 months of learning the language of this man, he understood that particular movement meant. Not here. They found a corridor off the main lobby. Marble floors, lower lighting, the sound of the gala pressing against the walls like something kept behind glass. Dante stopped. He turned to face Zephyr. And Zephyr said it before the silence could become something he'd regret. "Did you marry me because you loved me? Or because you wanted control?" He hadn't planned to ask it, but Cassius's words were still moving through him. A piece on a board, and the ring on his finger was beautiful and real and chosen by a man who had not asked him before choosing it. And Zephyr needed to know which truth he was standing inside of. Dante didn't answer immediately. That pause, that specific pause, it did something to Zephyr's chest that no words could have. Then Dante exhaled. "After the Mercer Building incident." His voice was low, even, like he was reading from a report he hadn't wanted to file. "You were followed. 3 blocks from your apartment. My men intercepted it before it became something else." Zephyr went still. He hadn't known about that. "You became a target," Dante continued, "because of your connection to me. I married you quietly because a formal, public claim creates legal protections that a relationship does not." He looked at Zephyr steadily. "Not because I needed leverage. Because I needed you to have a layer of protection I couldn't build any other way." Zephyr processed that. Processed it slowly. "You didn't tell me." "No." "Why?" Dante looked at him. And then something happened that Zephyr had not seen before. Not in 8 months. Not in a single closed-door room or private moment or morning of silence. Dante's expression shifted. Not collapsed. Not cracked. Just shifted. Like a curtain moving in a room you thought had no windows. "Because if you knew the full scope of what you'd walked into by being with me," Dante said, "I wasn't sure you'd stay." Pause on that. Dante Rashid, billionaire, empire owner, the man that powerful people reposition themselves around, was afraid. Not of an enemy, of losing Zephyr. Zephyr opened his mouth. Closed it. The ring on his finger caught the low corridor light and held it. "If they find out what you are to me," Dante said, "they'll use you. They already tried." His jaw tightened. Tonight was a test. Cassius wasn't here for the contract. He was sent to measure how much I'd move for you. Zephyr's stomach dropped. Sent by who? Dante looked like he was about to answer. Then a sharp knock of footsteps from the corridor entrance. one of Dante's men, moving fast, expression controlled but tight in the way faces get tight when the information they're carrying is urgent. The man stopped, leaned close, whispered for words. Dante's entire posture changed. Zephyr watched it happen. Watched the stillness shift into something harder, something operational. And he knew before Dante turned back to him that whatever those 4 words were, the night had just changed shape completely. "What did he say?" Zephyr asked. Dante looked at him. "Someone leaked the marriage records online." The air left the corridor. "All of them," Dante added. "Names, date, location, everything." Dante moved. Not fast, controlled. The kind of movement that doesn't waste anything. He touched Zephyr's arm once, brief, firm, a direction not a comfort, and said, "Stay inside the building." Then he was speaking into his earpiece, and the corridor filled with the quiet, efficient chaos of men who had trained for exactly this. Guests in the main lobby didn't know yet. They were still processing the ring reveal, still whispering about 8 months, still reconstructing the evening's events into the version they'd tell at dinner parties for the next 3 weeks. They didn't know that somewhere outside or inside or both, a file had gone live. Full names, the date, the county clerk's office where it was registered. A marriage that had existed quietly for 8 months was now a headline on 3 different platforms and climbing. Zephyr pressed his back against the corridor wall. He thought about everything Dante had just told him. Target, protection, the Mercer building, men intercepted. He thought about all the times he had walked through this city feeling uncertain. No ring, no public claim, no language for what he and Dante were, and underneath all of it, apparently, there had been a structure. A decision. A legal wall built around him that he hadn't known existed. He didn't know whether to feel protected or managed. He was still deciding when Cassius appeared at the corridor entrance. No bodyguards flanking him now. No investors. No audience. Just him. And the expression on his face was one Zephyr had never seen before. Not smug. Not calculating. Raw. "I didn't want it to go this far," Cassius said. Zephyr looked at him. "You leaked it." Cassius didn't deny it. That was its own answer. "I needed leverage," he said. Flat. Almost hollow. Like the words cost him something he hadn't budgeted for. "I needed Dante off balance. I needed." He stopped. Exhaled. "I needed the contract, Zeph. My company is done without it. I'm done." Zephyr studied him. The man who had once been the most important person in his world. Gray suit. Cologne that cost more than most people's rent. Eyes that had gone somewhere past desperation into a territory Zephyr didn't have a name for. "You came here to use me," Zephyr said. Not angry, just clear. Cassius's jaw worked. "I came here because you were the only card I had left." Zephyr felt something settle inside him. Not forgiveness. Not anger. Something quieter than both. "Then you played the wrong hand," Zephyr said. He stepped past Cassius. And Cassius let him go. Because whatever was left of the man in the gray suit in that corridor, it didn't have the energy to block a door anymore. Zephyr moved back toward the main lobby. He heard it before he saw it. The shift in the room's frequency. The specific pitch of a crowd that has moved from social tension into something that doesn't have a name yet but feels like alarm. Then came the sound that confirmed it. Sharp. Exterior. Unmistakable. 2 gunshots. From outside the hotel entrance. The lobby erupted. Not screaming, not full panic, but the sudden sharp movement of bodies all deciding direction at once. Champagne glasses abandoned. Voices rising, phones lifted. Dante's men were already moving, and Dante himself appeared from the far side of the lobby, scanning the room, scanning exits, scanning, until his eyes found Zephyr and locked. He crossed the distance between them in 8 steps. His hand came up to the side of Zephyr's face. "Are you hurt?" "No." Zephyr grabbed his arm. "What's happening outside?" Dante looked at him, and what Zephyr saw in his expression wasn't fear. It was the look of a man confirming something he had already prepared for. "Cassius wasn't working alone," Dante said. "The sirens arrived in layers. First 1, then 3. Then the kind of convergence that meant someone had made a call above the standard level and resources were being redirectized fast. Blue and red light moved through the lobby's tall glass windows in waves. Guests pressed toward the interior. Staff directed people away from the entrance. Dante's security had formed a perimeter around the front in under 90 seconds. Practiced, wordless, total. Zephyr stood beside Dante and watched it unfold. The man outside, the one who had fired, was already on the ground by the time the first police unit reached the entrance. Dante's men had moved faster. They always moved faster. And standing 20 feet from the front door, hands raised, speaking to a federal agent who had materialized from somewhere inside the gala itself, was Cassius Crow. Not running, not fighting, just standing there, answering questions. Shoulders dropped. The gray suit wrinkled now, the expensive cologne doing nothing to cover what the evening had cost him. The federal agent wasn't there for the gunshots. She had been inside the building all night, waiting. Dante had known. He had known Cassius was flagged. He had known the federal presence was there. He had known 3 weeks ago, when he bought Cassius's debt from the syndicate, that the trail behind it would eventually lead to a night like this one. He hadn't stopped it. He had aimed it. Zephyr turned to look at him. "You planned this." Dante met his eyes. "I prepared for it," he said. "There's a difference." "How long?" "Since the Mercer incident." Zephyr exhaled slowly. 3 months. Dante had been 3 months ahead of tonight for 3 months. Outside, Cassius was being guided toward a vehicle. He didn't look back. That was the thing about men like Cassius. When the performance was finally over, they didn't give you a final scene. They just became small and quiet and let themselves be moved. Dante stepped forward. He reached for Zephyr's left hand. He looked at the ring, the one already on Zephyr's finger, and he adjusted it. Just slightly. Just enough to feel like the gesture it was. A decision, not a performance. "I should have told you sooner," Dante said. His voice was lower now. The operational edge was gone. What was underneath it was something Zephyr had heard before, in mornings before the city started, in the specific quality of silence between 2 people who have stopped pretending. About the protection. About the marriage registration. About the target. "Yes," Zephyr said. "You should have. I know. You can't protect me by keeping me in the dark, Dante. I know that too." A pause. The sirens outside were quieting now. The crowd inside had moved from alarm into the stunned, slow exhale of people realizing the danger has passed and they can begin constructing the story of their evening. Zephyr looked down at the ring. It had not left his finger. He hadn't taken it off. He hadn't even considered it. That mattered. "I need to know things," Zephyr said. "From here forward. I need to know." "Yes. Not after. Not when it becomes necessary. Before." Dante looked at him and nodded. Not the practiced nod of a man managing a situation. The nod of a man who had just been handed a standard he intended to meet. Zephyr exhaled, and something in his chest, the part that had been clenched since Cassius walked into the lobby with his gray suit and his calculated cruelty, loosened. Not all the way, but enough. The moral of tonight wasn't complicated. Public humiliation is a tool. People reach for it when they've run out of real weapons. When they have nothing left to offer except the hope that making you small will make them feel larger. Cassius Crow hadn't come tonight because he loved Zephyr. He'd come because Zephyr was the only pressure point he could still reach. And the person who laughs at you in public, who calls you temporary, who blocks your exit and delivers your worst fear out loud, that person doesn't miss you. They miss the version of you that didn't know your own worth. Real love is not the loudest thing in the room. Sometimes it's the ring that was already chosen, the protection that was already built. The man who crossed 8 steps in a crowded lobby just to put his hand on your face and ask if you were hurt. Zephyr looked at Dante. "We're talking tonight," he said. "All of it. Everything I don't know." "Tonight," Dante agreed. They turned toward the lobby exit together. And then Zephyr stopped. Across the street, visible through the tall glass front of the Echelon Hotel. Standing on the sidewalk beyond the police line, beyond the vehicles, beyond the controlled chaos of everything that had just unfolded, a man, still, watching, not a bystander pressing forward to see what happened, not a journalist lifting a phone, just a man, standing in the cold, smiling, like he had watched tonight's entire performance with great satisfaction. Like tonight had gone exactly the way he needed it to go. Zephyr grabbed Dante's arm. Dante followed his eyeline. 1 second of silence. Then Dante's jaw set in a way Zephyr had never seen before. Not the controlled stillness of a man deciding. The stillness of a man recognizing. "Get back from the window," Dante said. "Who is that?" Dante stepped in front of him. Cassius wasn't the only enemy in that room tonight. He turned and spoke into his earpiece. 1 sentence. Short. And every man in the lobby began to move. "Thank you for watching all the way to this moment. This story isn't just fiction. It's about knowing your worth, recognizing who truly protects you, and understanding that the people who try to humiliate you in public are the ones most afraid of your strength." If this story moved you, if Zephyr's journey felt real, drop a comment and tell me, what was the moment tonight that hit you hardest? Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. There are more stories coming, stories that will challenge you, inspire you, and remind you that love, real love, always shows up. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. The man across the street is still watching, and Dante knows his name.